This is the first Thursday of the month. It is question and answer Thursday. And I'll remind you that these questions don't have to be only about meditation, although it is a meditation class. So, of course, feel free to ask me about meditation. But you guys can ask me about anything else that's tangentially related. People ask about forgiveness, or what do I do when I hate somebody, or whatever. Anything that is kind of a deep thing, don't just ask me about the 4 positions of a front kick. And this is my best answer for you tonight. This is not what's written in stone. This is not the only answer to this question. In fact, if you ask me the same question in a week, I'll probably give you a different answer. For sure, if you ask me again in 10 years, I'll give you a much better answer. So keep coming for 10 years and then ask me again, and we'll see what we can get. I think I've got a question from somebody watching at home. Go ahead, Kaya.
Sarah, I have a question regarding what's the difference between being a martial artist and a fighter? And to give a context, because let
me catch people up first. The difference between being a martial artist and a fighter. Go ahead.
Because fighting as far as throwing techniques, but I have found the more I do it, the more it becomes sort of the art of fighting as opposed to actually fighting. And it's like a refinement sort of starts to happen where I'm actually more peaceful rather than more aggressive.
Yeah, I've got it. I could talk about this for the entire class. I'm going to do my best to keep it succinct. So Kaya was in class earlier today. She was complaining before class. She's like, I feel like we never spar anymore. And I was like, oh, really? We spar quite a bit, but we're going to spar today. So we sparred with Kaya in class. And so your question about the difference between martial arts and fighting, of course, is the timing is good and it's apropos for you. And you probably experienced what you were talking about in your question today in class, where it's not just fighting. It doesn't just purely feel like I'm defending myself. Obviously, when you're practicing in class and it's safe and you're practicing with somebody who's smiling at you and not trying to kill you, then it's going to have a different kind of feeling from if it were actual self-defense. But I'm going to say that even if you were defending yourself for real and this person was actually trying to hurt you, it's possible for you to have a similar kind of experience where it is kind of flowing through you and it's not purely a physical activity. Now, of course, if you are starting to stress out about somebody trying to attack you, if you're starting to feel anxiety or fear or you freeze up, then that is a big part of what we're working on, not only for self-defense, but also just for the art. And you'll experience that to a lesser degree when you're sparring with somebody. Sometimes somebody is going to be so good that they're overwhelming you and you're just like, I don't know what to do. I was sparring with somebody today and it's not like I was like overwhelming them that much. You can tell he's kind of tired, and at a certain point you just kind of like gave up. Like that, you're going to feel like giving up sometimes, but that is not going to work very well in martial arts or in self-defense. So if I could give you like a buzzword or phrase, it would be like the difference between martial arts and fighting is martial arts is like spiritual fighting, or fighting with a purpose that is deeper, that transforms us. And the physical techniques that we learn should all work for self-defense and for fighting. I'll make a further distinction here where what we are after is, even on a physical level, different from fighting in the way that a lot of people think of fighting, where people think fighting is like 2 people are trying to hurt each other. Well, that's not really our goal. Our goal from a physical standpoint is to defend ourselves, which means that if I can get away without having to hurt the other person, but I don't get hurt, that's a great thing. I'll try to do that as well. You can't do that in sparring. If you're in class sparring with somebody, you can't just run away. That's not going to help you or your partner. You should know that you should do that in self-defense, but in actual class, you have to stay in there and stay engaged. Now, You've heard me talk about Mushin, no mind. There's a wall scroll in the back of the dojo that says this. It's the only kind of piece of propaganda that we have in the dojo. And it is possible to be in such a state of focus, of single pointed focus, that even in self-defense, when somebody is actually trying to hurt you, but for sure in sparring, as you practice with a partner in the dojo, that you should be able to be in a state of moving meditation. So Mushin is the state of mind that we go into when we are meditating, whether it's a sitting meditation or a moving meditation like sparring or Tai Chi. And if you're newer to sparring and it's stressful for you and you just keep thinking about, I'm trying to survive right now. If you're in that survival mode in class or outside, then you're not going to be in Mushin. It's not going to feel like a moving meditation. But what we are aiming to do is to be able to have that state of no mind in class, and then eventually to be at our highest level of self-defense. We actually want to be in a state of no mind where we're not worried about losing, we're not worried about dying, because all of that thought gets in the way of you being able to respond quickly and be effective with your technique. So ultimately, we are working on getting into that state of Mushin or no mind. We practice it in class, and then it should be able to occur outside eventually. It might be years or decades before that actually happens, but you get so used to it in practice that it can be taken outside. Now, that is just a quick summary of what we're talking about as far as the difference between like what we're physically doing as a martial artist and the difference between that and fighting. But there's a whole other realm of this, which you've heard me talk about many times. Fighting has nothing to do with meditation. Meditation is very much a part of martial arts. Martial arts is like the art of self-perfection. So as you said, like you're honing technique in class, you're also honing yourself. You're honing your mind's ability to be in that state. You're honing your discipline and focus. And all of this should be happening while we are physically practicing, but also while we are, in sitting meditation. And a martial artist takes what you learn in class into everyday life, not just self-defense, but in everything that you do, right? So you're driving and you should be able to be calm and focused even if somebody cuts you off. Just like in class, you're sparring and maybe somebody punches you a little bit harder than you like being punched. Instead of flipping out, you're able to keep yourself calm, keep your wits about you, and practice safely and effectively. So when we are in class, we're in the forge. We are being like forged and honed like a blacksmith honing a blade, and we get heated up, we get pounded out. They fold the steel over, pound it out again, fold the steel over, sharpen it. All this process is kind of what class is going to feel like for us sometimes. And at the end of it, we are a sharper, stronger, better version of ourselves. If you get in a fight and you win or lose, you're probably going to get hurt, but not that much happens like on a deep spiritual level. But martial arts should definitely be affecting us on a deeply spiritual, profoundly personal, and long-lasting level. Now, it could certainly happen to you that you get into a fight and it's a traumatic experience, and that impacts you in a deep and profound way for the rest of your life. And that is not what we're aiming for in class. We don't want this to feel like trauma. And sometimes it might. And so we just practice. And sometimes people come in to do class when they have actually experienced trauma before. And one of the things that we're trying to do with the physical act of sparring or, kind of training ourselves to be able to defend ourselves in a real fight is to do it in a way that is safe and gradually kind of turning up the heat so that you can let go of that trauma. You can be able to deal in real life with a self-defense situation without freezing, without flipping out and losing your cool, to be able to respond well in the moment. So that's my short version of that answer. Other question? Yes, ma'am.
I feel like my question is very similar to Brian's.
Well, I'll try to give you a different answer anyways. Go ahead.
But if I have another question, like a different one. But I was noticing in the quick research I was doing about our style of food, and that it seems to split into external and internal styles or practices.
Yeah, within different styles of Kung Fu, and for sure in different styles of martial arts, but this is very common in Chinese martial arts, they'll draw a distinction between internal and external styles. Internal is like Tai Chi, Qigong is considered as a martial art for a lot of people. Bagua is also kind of similar to Tai Chi. And then the external, like our Kung Fu class, where we're punching and kicking and there's less of an internal focus, less obvious of an internal focus. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess it's that less obvious part. So I feel like I was telling you today that the sparring itself is the most emotionally agitating because someone's actually punching at my face and that stresses me out. Which seems like a normal evolutionary response, but I'm slowly building up that calmness that you're talking about, just to like continue to stay focused. So I just was wondering how much of it, with that quiet, unspoken internal practice, just to talk about that balance of it, I guess.
Yeah, I'll do my best. So when we are practicing martial arts, for example, in Tai Chi, there are some things that will make very clear this is how it would work in self-defense, but that's very small part of what we do in Tai Chi. The vast majority of it is practicing as a moving meditation. So as you're moving slowly and you're breathing deeply, it's kind of easy to feel that turn into a moving meditation where you're very calm. Literally just breathing deeply and slowly will start to turn anything that you're doing into a moving meditation. It will start to calm your mind and kind of hone your focus. Now, if you were to do Tai Chi, and for example, like we did push hands at the end of class today, and you let go of the breath, and you started practicing like, I'm trying to win right now, I'm trying to push my partner and I'm not gonna let them push me, then that will start to shift things, right? And that's starting to head in the direction of what sparring can feel like. Sparring is like at the other end of that spectrum, where it feels very much like this, me versus my partner. And yet, the longer we practice and the more we practice with this idea in mind of becoming one with our partner, or letting go of the ego and just being in the present, then the more that will start to happen. And it's easier to do in Tai Chi when you're moving slowly and breathing, but it will happen eventually with sparring, partly just when you get used to it, but also when you actually practice going back to your breath in sparring. So this is something that I tell people all the time. I'd make a bigger deal about it in jiu-jitsu. And you have said that in jiu-jitsu, you don't feel as much like my life's in danger, and so I have to kind of freak out when somebody's trying to do something. You feel a little bit more like you're, connecting with your partner. You can move with their energy. You said the same thing about like sticky hands, right? And the truth is, there should not really be a black and white distinction between internal and external martial arts. And what we do is in Tai Chi, we really exaggerate, or we really emphasize the internal part of the practice. And very much, we're not sweeping the external part under the rug. We're just not doing it as much. And in Kung Fu, in our class, which basically ends up being like MMA with philosophy, we do the opposite. We are very much emphasizing the external parts. We talk a lot about how it works for self-defense and how this is actually going to happen. But they are on the same continuum. They're on the same spectrum, right? Tai Chi's over here and Kung Fu's over here. But the more you practice each, the more they'll start to kind of feel like the same thing. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of people practice both styles. And then jiu-jitsu as well. Jiu-jitsu really should feel like Tai Chi on the ground. You're flowing, you know, like push hands with your partner. So you were mentioning earlier that it's like the visual stimulus of somebody throwing a punch at your face that causes you to just be like, eh, or like actually blink or turn away. You didn't seem to do that a whole lot with me when we were sparring today, but it can happen. And as you mentioned, it's definitely an evolutionary response. It's something that you don't have to train into yourself. Everybody, not everybody, but most people, when you throw a punch at them, they'll do some version of this. Close their eyes, turn away, maybe throws the hands up, maybe not. This part is fine, but this part is fine, but the turning away and blinking or closing your eyes is not what we want. So then we just train ourselves out of that, right? And it is through that training that we can start to be in that state of calm. And it's partly just by having punches thrown at you so many times, and sometimes you get hit by them and you realize, I'm going to survive this. It's actually okay if I do get hit. I trust my partners and I know that I'm not going to get seriously hurt. That's good. That said, we are never really going to get to the point that I can foresee where the Kung Fu class purely feels like Tai Chi, nor are we going to get to the place where Tai Chi purely feels like Kung Fu. Like the drills that we are doing are different. And that's kind of the same idea in internal versus external martial arts. The internal martial art, it has some kind of a physical movement component that could be used for self-defense. And it's the same thing in Tai Chi. I mean, it seems ridiculous to think that this would work in self-defense, but if you speed up the motion and you add a focus to it, it can work, right? And the opposite for Kung Fu. But the mindset should really be kind of converging in a way where even though there are punches and kicks being thrown at us, or we're grappling and they're trying to choke us out, we're still able to have our awareness, our attention within, and focusing on the breath and letting go of tension and letting go of extra thoughts and letting go of the ego. So it's definitely fair to say that it's going to feel more easy to slip into a meditative state of mind in an internal martial art. It's really geared towards that. And it's certainly easy to see how you'll kind of slip more into a self-defense mindset and really be focusing on that when you're doing an external style of martial arts. But they should really be the same. There is no martial art, in my opinion, and this is, you know, what my Sifu says all the time as well. There's no martial arts without meditation, without that internal discipline and focus. So it is very common for people to draw that hard distinction between internal and external. And it's simple. The external, they don't meditate. There's no internal side of it, right? The internal is like, they'll talk sometimes about self-defense, but it's much more about the flow and just kind of moving with your breath, practicing forms, focusing on your internal experience. So that's why we have two separate classes, and it's why you should do both classes, and jiu-jitsu too. Other question. And remember, if you guys have questions online, you can also type them in. You got your second one? Go ahead, let's have it. We don't have a lot of people shooting their hands up here.
In regards to pride versus ego, I know that sometimes I can start to attach the ego to feeling like accomplished in something or having pride about something. And I have an immediate reaction like, no, I don't want that. But there's also that element like I should feel good about certain things I'm doing in my life. And so what is the nuance between being proud of yourself and having ego?
Yeah, great question. This will be the last one, so anybody that has a question, too bad. Yeah, put your hand back down, guys. So I talk about the ego all the time. We talk about it in terms of meditation is the thing that we're trying to let go of. And when we think about enlightenment, it is like transcending the ego. And in a meditation, this is one of our main goals is to be able to transcend the small self, the ego, and just experience, oneness with the universe and just have nothing that is an attachment in your mind. And that is distinct from saying that you should never have an ego, never have a sense of individuality or completely lose yourself. It is more like I have the ability to set it aside and let it go. And with pride, it's kind of the same thing. We are not seeking pride. We're not, if we take it back to sparring, I guess I'm going to talk about sparring today. You land a great combination on somebody. Of course, your natural response is, yeah, I'm great. I did that. Look at me. I hope Sifu was watching. And that's natural. And that's part of what we're trying to get over in sparring. Just like what we're trying to get over is when my partner dusts me with a great combination, I don't want to go, oh, I'm terrible. I suck. Every time my partner taps me in jiu-jitsu, I go like, am I ever going to get this? I don't think I'm getting any better. I'm terrible. That's ego. Those are the two ends of the spectrum of ego and lots of stuff in between. And we don't want to pretend that we're not going to experience pride, and we don't want to pretend that we're not going to experience the other, shame, whatever. But what we are also not going to pretend is that it's impossible to let those things go, or that it's impossible to spar or move through life without being able to let go of those things pretty quickly. So on some level, a basic level, what we're talking about is recognizing it and being able to let go of it. The issue with the ego is when you are totally identifying as the ego, you can't let go of it because it feels like you're dying. And that might be what meditation feels like sometimes when you are actually letting go of the ego, especially for the first time, and it's like you feel like you're losing yourself. But you can rest assured, relax, it'll be right back. It's not going anywhere permanently. So this is, enlightenment is almost just like a process of being able to recognize more quickly and let it go more completely. And pride, it serves a purpose, just like our ego in general serves a purpose. The purpose of it can be a couple of different things. There are, subtleties there, but part of what it's doing is like we recognize what we need to pay attention to. And pride can give us some feedback of like, this is something that I want to do more of. Great. But as soon as we start getting attached to this feeling of like, I'm only doing this because it makes me feel like I'm better than somebody else. This is where pride gets real sticky and we want to let go of it. So this is a very clear sign that we are identifying as ego is when we start comparing and setting ourselves above or below other people. And so when pride tells us, I'm better than you, that's not helpful. Let that go. When pride tells me, I can't possibly compete, you're way better than me, let that go. That's not helpful. So if it's just like a little bit of a nice feeling and then you're like, okay, that's good, and then just let it go, that'll be easy to let it go. it gets actually harder to let go of the more entrenched in that space of I'm not good enough or I'm better than you. And part of our goal in meditation is to just recognize that and let it go. You know, meditation, just like martial arts, can be a very humbling experience. So on a basic level, you might feel like you try to sit and meditate and you get humbled very quickly because you're bad at it and you keep thinking and then you realize I need to work on this a lot. Just like in sparring, you get humbled because your partner lights you up and you realize I need to work on this. I'm not very good at it. And that's totally fine. Being humbled is different from thinking I'm bad. Being humbled is like I've got a long way to go. It's not taking it personally and meaning that I am less than. So we want to be careful not to let meditation turn into that too. When we're humbled by our practice, it's a good thing, and don't let it slide into pride, envy, shame, any of that. We recognize it, we go, oh, that's an interesting thought. This is an interesting feeling that I have. Maybe it's a physical feeling that I have in my body. And then I just let it go and return back to the breath. So let's practice doing that. Sit comfortably. Cool. Close eyes, spine straight, eyes upturned, relax, watch the breath. Let go of all thoughts, worries, and cares. Be here now. When your mind wanders, bring it gently back to the breath. You feel like you're really getting attached to a certain thought, you can just label it without judgment, without judging yourself. Just say the word thought in your mind and let it go. Return back to the breath.